Okay, today we'll be going over the four major parts that make up the air conditioning system, refrigeration system, mainly your split system, indoor, outdoor system. And we'll start with the outdoor system, the different parts that make up the outdoor system. The first part is this unit here. This whole unit is called the condenser. And another name for the condenser is that they also call it a heat rejector. And we'll be going over that in class as to why they call it a heat rejector. But always remember that this whole unit is called a condensing unit. Now, if you have a heat pump, this would just be considered the outdoor unit, but it's always located outside, okay? Now, let's go over the parts that make up the condensing unit. The first part we see here, we'll go over the compressor. This is the compressor here. This is called a scroll compressor. This is a scroll compressor. And we also have our fan. This is called the condenser fan. Okay, has two blades, but it's the condenser fan motor here. Okay. Another part that makes up the condensing unit that we want to cover are these two devices here. This device is one of the main important parts that make up the condensing unit. This is the contactor. And this is the part that turns everything on, the condenser fan and the compressor, the contactor. All right. This is the contact, actual contact. And that has to be made in order for the unit to come on. It has to be made at the contactor. This is the 24 volt side of the contactor. 24 volts coming from inside your house, the furnace. On the low voltage side of the control board inside your house, and we'll point to that as well. The low voltage sides of your furnace, 24 volts. And this is 240 volts coming in at the bottom. 240 volts here coming in from our outdoor disconnect. Each leg is 120 volts, so that gives us 240 volts coming in, and if we have 24 volts and this contact is pushed in, that means we have 240 volts going out at the top. Now, the 240 volts is enabling the compressor and the condenser fan to come on. They're 240 volts. That's what's happening with the 240 volts. We also have another device here called the capacitor. And this is called a dual run capacitor. They call it a dual run because it's two things it's doing, is starting and running. Dual start run capacitor. And this is the device that gives the compressor and the fan the starting torque in order for it to start. And without that starting torque on a compressor, condenser, the unit will not start. So this is what starts it with that starting torque here. And this is the power, the 240 volts that powers everything here in the condensing unit. Okay, now let's go inside. Okay, now we're inside. This device here is located inside your furnace, and this is called a heat exchanger. And this heat exchanger is defined as an evaporator. Okay, and as you can see, we have aluminum coils on our evaporators. Most of what you see are copper tubing, but this is aluminum but the evaporator, and this is the evaporator, also called the cooling coil. These are the aluminum fins that make up the evaporator, and this is our aluminum tubing that makes up the evaporator as well. When the refrigerant comes in here, on the liquid line here, comes in, and it goes into another device called the metering device. This is the metering device here. All right, and the metering device is where the refrigerant goes into the evaporator, and that's where evaporation takes place, because a change of state takes place and a change of temperature and state takes place in the evaporator. All right, this is called the low side, or the low pressure, as it enters the evaporator. All right, it goes into the evaporator, comes out here, and it comes out as a gas around 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's going right back to where it came from, outside at the condensing unit, to those lines you see at the bottom, at the very bottom there, those lines there. Yeah, and that's where it goes back into the condensing unit, and the cycle goes on and on and on. And the last component I'm going to discuss today is the, not the last, but we also forgot to mention the low voltage side here. This is where this is our control board here. This is the control board, and you have 24 volts, and your cable is running from here to outside at the condensing unit, and that's what turns on the contactor that enables the fan and the compressor to turn on with help of the capacitor to start it. That's the whole cycle of your refrigeration system. And as you go, we also want to introduce our condensate pump. If you have an air conditioning unit split system, you must have a condensate pump. If you don't have a condensate pump, then you may have a drain line right at the unit where the condensation comes out of the evaporator. But if not, you have to use a condensate pump where it's plugged in, and this is where it discharges either outside or at a sink or wherever you divide it goes.